The system flagged the contact because it couldn't agree with itself. Primary radar held a return, low, intermittent, riding just above background noise. Speed inconsistent. Profile unstable. Not enough mass to resolve cleanly. Not enough absence to discard. Secondary sensors didn't confirm it. Electro-optical feeds showed nothing. AIS returned silence. For a moment, the system assumed error. It recalibrated. Adjusted gain. Re-ran correlation. The contact persisted, but only partially. Every update produced a different answer. Range shifted by meters. Speed jumped without acceleration. Confidence values decayed instead of improving. This wasn't an intrusion. No boundary had been crossed. No rule had been violated. Yet the track refused to collapse into certainty. On the display, the contact changed state. Not identified, not lost, just unresolved. That state matters. Because in maritime systems, uncertainty isn't neutral. It's treated as a variable that must be contained. Nothing changed on deck, no alarms, no announcements. But inside the system, safety margins widened. And once that process begins, it doesn't need to know what you are, only that you don't make sense. The contact didn't move closer. That was the problem. Its position shifted just enough to remain relevant, but never enough to clarify itself. Each update produced a slightly different solution. Range adjusted, bearing smoothed, speed recalculated. Yet none of them converged. Under normal conditions, that divergence would resolve. Here, it widened. Primary radar continued to hold a return, but its strength fluctuated unpredictably. Returns rose above noise, then sank back into it, forcing the system to repeatedly reclassify the same data as marginal rather than reliable. Secondary confirmation lagged, then dropped out entirely. Electro-optical tasking was expanded, sweeping wider arcs, increasing dwell time, refining filters designed to strip away sea clutter and atmospheric distortion. Nothing appeared. Below the surface, sonar returns added noise instead of certainty. Transient echoes that aligned with the track just long enough to matter, then vanished before they could be trusted. Each fleeting correlation was logged, weighted, then discounted as the system failed to reproduce it twice. The system began downgrading confidence. Track quality fell below nominal thresholds. Correlation weights shifted. Historical assumptions, what normally moved like a vessel, what normally didn't, were deprioritized in favor of worst-case envelopes. And then the escalation became procedural. The track manager stopped treating the contact as a single object and started treating it as a problem set. A cluster of possible positions bounded by error bars that kept expanding. The system generated multiple candidate tracks, tried to merge them, failed, and split them again. Every failure created work. More scan time, more correlation passes. More, is this real? Loops that consumed attention without producing certainty. The display didn't show panic. It showed math. Confidence percentages falling. Track quality indicators turning from stable to degraded. Classification fields flipping between placeholders. Unknown, assumed, uncorrelated, pending. Because nothing stayed consistent long enough to lock. Time became a factor. The longer the contact persisted without clarification, the more the system treated the absence of certainty as meaningful data. Persistence without confirmation forced escalation logic forward, not backward. As confidence dropped, buffers expanded. Projected safety zones widened automatically, extending beyond the ship's planned track. Margins that existed only as background calculations moved forward into active consideration. This expansion wasn't dramatic. It was procedural, incremental, irreversible unless certainty returned. A second set of thresholds activated quietly, not threat thresholds, but risk of surprise thresholds. The system began assuming that anything unresolved near a planned route could represent intent, even if nothing about the track proved it. That assumption wasn't emotional. It was doctrinal. No one declared a threat. No posture changed. But escalation had already begun. Not because the contact behaved aggressively, but because the data stopped agreeing. And in maritime systems, disagreement is treated as intent unknown, which is enough. The response began quietly. No broadcast warnings, no maneuvering orders passed over open channels, no visible shift in posture that would signal escalation beyond the ship. Instead, procedures activated in the background. The navigation solution was adjusted first, not to avoid the contact, but to reduce exposure. Minor course corrections were plotted, reviewed, and approved through standard channels, small enough to appear routine, large enough to widen separation if the track proved real. These adjustments were conservative by design. They didn't assume hostility. They assumed uncertainty. On the bridge, the changes looked like ordinary seamanship. Inside the combat information picture, they were geometry, shifting relative motion, changing closure rates, buying time without admitting why time was needed. Sensor tasking increased. Radar modes shifted to prioritize persistence over clarity. Refresh rates tightened. Scan volumes narrowed. The system wasn't trying to see more. It was trying to see the same thing twice under controlled conditions. Operators ran the same checks in parallel. They compared the contact against known interference patterns. They cross-referenced expected traffic lanes. They validated timing, alignment, and calibration. They checked whether the return behaved like weather, like clutter, like a false echo. Each test came back incomplete. Electro-optical systems were re-cued repeatedly, slewing back to the same empty coordinates as the track updated. Each pass returned nothing, and each failure was logged rather than dismissed, contributing to the growing profile of inconsistency. Communications tightened, not externally, but internally. Shorter calls, fewer assumptions. Everything phrased in confidence levels instead of declarations. The watch didn't say, "There's a vessel." It said, "We have an unresolved return." It didn't say, "It's closing." It said, "Relative motion is uncertain." Beyond the ship, the operational picture expanded. Maritime patrol assets were notified, not scrambled. Their tasking remained conditional, focused on coverage rather than pursuit. Surface units in the area were alerted, not redirected, briefed only on the existence of an unresolved contact and the need for heightened awareness. No one was told to intercept, only to observe, to listen, to remain available if the uncertainty hardened into something else. The ship did not chase the contact because chasing would turn uncertainty into commitment. Instead, it shaped the environment around the uncertainty, positioning, spacing, sensor focus, so that if the contact became real, it would become real on the ship's terms. Rules of engagement were reviewed, not changed, not activated, simply surfaced. Ready if needed, untouched if not. Other procedures were surfaced too. Reporting templates, escalation ladders. The checklist that exists for the moment when unknown becomes unacceptable. None of them were executed fully. But they were made ready, because readiness is cheaper than reaction. Throughout it all, the contact remained, still unresolved, still inconsistent, still present enough to shape decisions without justifying action. The system wasn't pursuing it. It was containing the possibility that it mattered. The contact never resolved. It didn't close distance. It didn't diverge. It didn't declare itself one way or another. Over time, the returns weakened. Primary radar held fragments, partial updates that failed correlation checks. Sonar no longer aligned. Electro-optical feeds continued to show empty water. Confidence values slipped below actionable thresholds, then below relevance altogether. Eventually, the system stopped trying to reconcile the track. Not because it was identified, but because it could no longer be trusted enough to matter. The transition was gradual, one downgrade at a time, one expired correlation window, one final confidence decay. The track didn't end, it decayed. First, the classification fields emptied. Then the correlation links broke. Then the system stopped assigning it priority over background noise. When that happened, the ship did not celebrate. It normalized. The safety buffers contracted. Sensor tasking returned to baseline. External alerts expired without follow-up. No interception occurred. No reportable incident was logged. No public acknowledgement was made. In the logs, the sequence closed as incomplete. An unresolved contact. A completed response cycle. No attribution. Operationally, everything worked. Procedures activated, margins protected. Decisions constrained risk without forcing escalation. Yet nothing was learned about what the contact actually was. And that matters, because the cost of these events isn't ammunition. It's attention. Minutes spent retasking sensors. Hours spent maintaining readiness. Time spent running procedures for something that never becomes confirmable. The ship returns to routine, but the system records a new data point. An example of uncertainty that behaved like nothing familiar. It can't label it, but it can remember the shape of the problem. Shift changes happen. The watch is relieved. The plot is handed over. And the contact becomes a line in a log that will never be satisfying to read. Unresolved, no visual, no AIS, no correlation, faded. The system did its job, and the uncertainty remained exactly where it started. Modern maritime doctrine is not built around certainty. It's built around control. Naval systems assume that the sea will never fully explain itself. Sensor gaps are expected. Conflicting data is normal. Identification is optional. What matters is whether uncertainty is allowed to create surprise. In this framework, ambiguity is not a failure state. It's an operating condition. A contact doesn't need to be classified to influence behavior. It only needs to remain unresolved long enough to shape margins, routes, and readiness. That's why the response didn't seek confrontation, and why it didn't require resolution. The system expanded space, reduced exposure, preserved optionality. Nothing had to be proven. Because at sea, the objective isn't to know what's out there. It's to ensure that whatever is out there never gets close enough to matter on its own terms. That is the real design goal. Deny the environment the ability to force a decision. Keep the ship inside a posture where every outcome remains manageable, even when the inputs are unreliable. It also explains the restraint. The system avoids actions that create irreversible commitments unless the contact forces it. No chase, no dramatic intercept, just controlled distance, layered sensing, and readiness held in reserve. Because if the sea teaches anything, it's that the next contact may look identical, until the moment it doesn't. The contact disappeared without explanation. But the system didn't fail. It functioned exactly as designed. And that design assumes one thing above all else. That uncertainty is permanent. And survivability depends on how quietly you manage it.